Before I start my video, I want to answer the question that is probably burning on most people's minds entering my video. And that question is, why don't these people like Carole Baskins, why don't they just release these big cats back into the wild? Well, the answer is very complex. The biggest reason is they're not from the wild. A lot of these cats, especially the ones in the sanctuary, they are not from the wild. They are born in captivity. That means they do not know how to survive in the wild. Another big reason aside from that is genetics. Let's say this big cat does manage to find the local tiger population. If they intermingle with them, they will introduce genetic flaws which will destroy the local tiger population. Hey, what's up guys? Prince of Macedon is here, Alex Khan. I call myself Prince of Macedon because I'm a strategy gamer whose military inspiration is Alexander the Great. But on this channel, I'm not a gamer. I talk about other things like cars, conventions, movies. Today, on the quarantine couch, we're going to talk about that show on Netflix that everyone else is talking about. The Tiger King, Murder, Madness, and Mayhem. So, without getting into the show per se, I want to talk more about a lot of the scary things that people are saying who have watched this show, and they are coming to all these outrageous conclusions based on what they saw on a TV show. So let's talk about the very first thing that people are saying. They are saying that Carole Baskins is a hypocrite because she doesn't treat her animals any better than Joe Exotic at GW Zoo. Well, PETA would disagree with you, and I know for a fact that PETA has researched both Carole Baskins and Joe Exotic, like thoroughly, and they have come to very different conclusions than what people on Facebook like you guys are coming to. Even David Spade, the actor, is making claims that Carole Baskins is a hypocrite and that she treats her big cats exactly the same way as Joe Exotic does, or Doc Antley in the Carolinas. So let's talk about PETA here. PETA is the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. They are like the most recognized organization out there who look for the well-being of animals. So yeah, they've studied both Carole Baskin's Big Cat Sanctuary in Tampa, and they've also studied the GW Zoo owned by Joe Exotic in Oklahoma. So let's talk about the two big differences in what they found with both establishments are. So when they first observed Carole Baskins, they did list a lot of things. Like when she first started, she was, I think she was breeding cats, and she was letting people handle little cubs. That's when she started though. When she very first started, that was like over 10 years ago. Since then, she has turned over a new leaf, and now PETA, they love what they've seen with the Big Cat Sanctuary, and now Big Cat Sanctuary is actually accredited by the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries. So in PETA's eyes, Big Cat Rescue has turned over a new leaf, and they are now a legitimate Big Cat Sanctuary. And so anyways, the only claim that they found wrong today with a Big Cat Rescue is that they are feeding their big cats in view of public visitors. That's kind of a half-truth, though. Once a year, Big Cat Rescue has this annual walkabout where visitors can walk anywhere they want. Any other day of the year, visitors are on guided tours with one of their guides. So these tigers, lions, and other big cats, they have a lot more privacy. But the annual walkabout, it's pretty noble. Like they use it to fundraise and sponsor their other big cat projects. But yeah, that's the only thing that PETA found wrong with Big Cat Rescue today. Now let's go look at the things that that PETA found wrong with the GWZ owned by Joe Exotic. And I actually have to just read this because there's so many bad things that they found. So PETA sent an investigator who came in as an employee for GW Zoo. And here's some of the things that they found. Wait, here we go. Oh, animals were routinely hit, punched, kicked, sprayed with cold water, and struck with rakes and shovels. And they were blasted with fire extinguishers to break up fights. They found two healthy adult tigers were killed, and their teeth were cut out to be given as gifts before their carcasses were dumped into a reeking, festering garbage pit. Here's one. Two badly injured horses in excruciating pain, including a former racehorse with a broken leg, were dumped at GW Zoo, and staff let them suffer for a few days until they could be butchered. So if you guys watch a documentary, a lot of these horses were just shot and fed to the tigers. That's in the documentary of Tiger King. Let's see here. A parent and two small children paid to handle two tiger cubs without being informed that the cubs were infected with ringworm, a very contagious fungal infection of the skin. Here's one. Two lion cubs recently declawed were forced to interact with the public until their paws bled. A tiger named Michaela, who hobbled around in pain on three legs after GW had her declawed, suffered in this condition for 2 years before she was destroyed. So this list just goes on. Oh, here's a really bad one. Employees were instructed to falsify USDA required paperwork regarding feeding schedules and environmental enrichment for primates to cover up the fact that the animals went hungry for days at a time. This is bad, guys. This is really bad. So, for all the people saying that Big Cat Rescue, Carole Baskins, treats her animals the same way as Joe Exotic at GW Zoo, I'm sorry to say, guys, you are not getting a big picture. You're taking your information from what you saw on a TV show, whereas PETA actually went there firsthand and studied both establishments. So yeah, PETA says that the only sanctuaries you can trust are those accredited by the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries, to which Big Cat Rescue is accredited by. So there's another claim that the cages owned by Carole Baskins are the same or even worse than the cages owned by GW Exotic. GW Zoo, owned by Joe Exotic. And again, PETA would disagree with you. PETA's observed both establishments, and they've only claimed that GW Zoo's cages were terrible condition and that animals were frequently getting out because of the poor conditions of these cages. Now, I've actually been to a Big Cat Rescue in Tampa, and I've seen how big these cages are. They are huge. So here's what Netflix dropped the ball on. They filmed both establishments, and when they were filming Big Cat Rescue, they didn't show how big the cages were. Like, they showed an interview with Carole Baskins in Tampa, and they showed a little seemingly small cage behind her with a lion inside. What they didn't show you was the rest of that cage. So at Big Cat Rescue, the way it works is it's a giant cage, and then in a small corner, there is a small subsection, and that's where the big cats go to feed and get water from. So what Netflix showed you, it only showed you that small subsection of the cage, making you think that that's how small the cages actually were. And Joe Exotic did the same thing when he went to Big Cat Rescue undercover. He took a picture of just a very small subsection of the cage, and he told his viewers that that's how small the cages were. And unfortunately, a lot of you guys, you know who you are, you fell for the same trick that Joe Exotic's viewers fell for too. The cages are not this small. They are huge. Here's a picture, for example. Here's a picture of the feeding section for the big cats. Now, when the big cat just walks backwards, you can see how big the cages actually are. They are huge. And yeah, unfortunately, Netflix, they decided not to show you that. They wanted you to think that Carole Baskins was in the same camp as Joe Exotic, which is definitely not true. And here's the biggest question topic that is coming up from this show, and that's, should Carole Baskins go to prison? That's one I can't really answer because I don't know, and I seriously doubt anyone, like most of you guys, don't even know. If you guys know for a fact that it was Carole Baskins who did it, you need to come to the police and then give them your evidence. But if your evidence is just watching a TV show on Netflix, and that's not really evidence. Sure, I watched The Tiger King. I saw the really funky interviews with Carole Baskins, and yeah, she does look crazy as hell in these interviews. But just remember that it's the filmmakers who pose these questions, and even though she looked awkward answering them, that doesn't mean she's a murderer, guys. If you do know for a fact that she is, then please go to the police and give them your evidence. Let's talk about the things that really need to be addressed. The treatment of big cats, it's insane. On the TV show, they showed Joe Exotic taking out these baby cubs to be petted. Same with Doc Antley at his establishment. They say after what 4 months, I think, they can no longer be petted like that anymore. They don't talk about what happens to these cubs after that 4 month period. They really don't say. But what people do know is that once an animal is brought up in captivity, they can't be released into the wild for two main reasons. One, you could contaminate the genetic pool of the tigers out there. Some of these cats are actually inbred, and there's all kinds of implications with releasing cats into the wild in terms of genetics. And the second big factor is if a cat's brought up in captivity, they don't have the survival instinct that a wild cat might have. So that's why with Big Cat Sanctuary, she has these cages, and the only reason places like Big Cat Rescue Sanctuary exist is because of places like Joe Exotics, where they've bred all these big cats in captivity. Once you do that, you need places to put these cats, and they can't be released into the wild for that very reason. So yeah, the treatment of big cats needs to be addressed. And most of you were just bamboozled by what you saw with Joe Exotic and his eccentric behavior. You completely missed the point of how these animals are being treated. They are being treated like crap. Again, go to PETA's website and you can see what they found when they investigated GW Zoo. And then the other big issue is Carole Baskin's first husband. The sheriff in Hillsborough County, Tampa, he came out and said that, because of the renewed interest in this case, he's going to leave this case wide open. And he was asking for new leads that points to the disappearance of Carole's first husband. That is great news. That is great news because this guy does need justice. He needs absolute justice because he's disappeared, and I can only think the worst things happen to him. No one just disappears off the face of the planet. Like, let's say he went to Costa Rica, he would have showed up somewhere. Somebody would have seen him. So yeah, I definitely think there was a crime committed against Carole Baskin's first husband, but I'm not gonna say it was her, based on her looking crazy. That is terrible, guys. I want there to be an investigation. I want there to be evidence. This do the police work and find out what happened to this guy because he needs justice. So those are my takeaways from this show. So in conclusion, I want to wrap up by saying there's so many bad things that people are taking away from watching this show, and it's just really sad to see. That said, I can see why people were so excited to watch this show and why they couldn't stop watching. I binge watched this show, in 2 days? That's pretty fast for me, but I watch shows at a pretty slow pace. But I binge watched it. I couldn't look away. I just wanted to put that out there. I just feel like there is this big angry mob being formed after watching the show. And I think you guys need to listen to reason and not base your feelings on what you see on a TV show. Do some research, guys.